everybody, this is Andrew from T is for Tech, and in today's video I'm taking a look at another mini PC, this time from a company called Trigkey. And this is the first mini PC that I've looked at from Trigkey, and I do appreciate them sending this over to the channel for unboxing, first look, and some testing. Pretty excited to take a look at this. Now, this is their Speed S version, and it is the S5, I guess they're calling it. And this includes the AMD Ryzen 7 5700U processor, so that's pretty cool. Comes with 16 gigs of memory, 500 gigs of storage. So what I'm going to do is unbox this, go over some more of the specs, show you the device, all the connectivity ports and all of that. Maybe take a look inside if I can open up the case easily. And then what I'm going to do, as usual with these mini PCs and other PCs that I test on the channel, I'll install some benchmarking software, run some benchmarks, gonna go over those at the end of this review, kind of on the computer. I'll record the screen, show you some of the results, and kind of go from there, okay? So the box basically just opens up this way. And you'll see right away there's a user manual, so S5, some English instructions and whatnot. Got some instructions here. Take a look at the accessories first. So you do have some accessories. Basically have a extension cable for the power adapter. Here's the power adapter. This is a standard kind of laptop looking power adapter with a barrel jack there. So this is how you plug it in. Comes with an HDMI cable. Two HDMI cables actually, a short one and a long one. It also comes with a VESA mount. So if you want to mount this on the back of your computer monitor to kind of keep your desk all clean, there's a way to mount it. Comes with some mounting screws. And then you have the machine itself. Now, like I've said in some other videos, it's kind of crazy how small these things have gotten over the years and how powerful they are, even though they're small. So, as you can see, this is what it looks like. It's kind of like a bluish, metallic blue color. If we look on the bottom, there's a couple screw holes there, so that's where you can mount that VESA adapter. There's some rubber cushions on the bottom. There's some screws there. It's probably for the to remove the bottom, which I'll do in a little bit then. This does have, like I said, AMD Ryzen 7 processor. So it is the Ryzen 7 5700U processor that features a Zen 2 architecture, 8 cores, 16 threads, has a max boost up to 4.3 gigahertz, and operates on 15 watt energy consumption. If we look here on the front, you have a couple USB 3 ports, a USB-C port, a headphone jack, and a power button. On the back side, you do have a 1 gigabit LAN connection, a couple more USB ports, a display port, HDMI port, and the power connection. And you have some venting up here for the cooling. You've got some venting on the sides for cooling as well. As I mentioned, this one does come with 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is DDR4 RAM at 3200 megahertz. I think it supports a max of 64 gigs, so if you want to upgrade that. It also has a 500 gigabyte PCIe 3.0 slot, and you can add another internal SSD up to max 2 terabytes. This does have, since it does have AMD Ryzen chip, it does have AMD Radeon graphics. I think it's Radeon 8 graphics with 1900 megahertz GPU. Wi-Fi 6, like I said, 1 gigabit LAN, Bluetooth 5.2. Now you can run 3 displays off of this if you do use the front-facing USB-C as well as the display port and the HDMI on the back. You can run 3 monitors. I think generally these types of mini PCs are good for lots of different stuff, right? Now, when you start getting into these AMD Radeon chips, this is where you can use these for some light gaming. You know, this one, probably the Ryzen 7, you can probably do some light to moderate games, and it should be able to handle those pretty well. Obviously, you can use this for office work, web conferencing, school, you know, if you want a home theater box, you want to do some video editing, I'm sure it'll work well for that with the 8 cores and 16 threads, music editing, etc. Right? So pretty much a really well-rounded, all-around performing device, kind of with this AMD chipset. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to quickly go ahead and take the bottom off of this so you can see what's inside and see how you can upgrade it and all of that. So this just does have a few 4 Phillips head little screws. So I'll go ahead and remove those. So this little rubber thing here is so you can pull that back off. And then basically here on the inside, you can see there is a mounting area for a 2.5-inch SSD hard drive. So you can go ahead and add another external hard drive to this by just sliding it in there, plugging it into that SATA adapter. So they do make this a little bit tough to get off. But you basically have 4 screws to kind of remove this little top piece, and then you can get to the inside here. So an M2 NVMe 2280 hard drive in here, flash SSD. I don't see a brand name on there. I don't know if it's Phison, Phison. So this might be kind of like a no-name SSD. And then also, I don't know what brand this is either, but there's 2 8GB RAM sticks in there. You have 2 slots. You can upgrade it to a max of 64, so you could put 2 32GB RAM chips in there. I mean, the rest of the motherboard is kind of standard. That's what it looks like, right? So you have the SSD there, you have the RAM slots, you have this top mounting plate that has a fan, and then also that's where you can mount the additional external SSD. That is how that works. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back together. So that is slightly more complicated to get access to the hard drive and the memory than in some other mini PCs that I've taken a look at. But I mean, again, it's 4 screws. I mean, if you're only going to upgrade and add another external SSD, all you have to do is take the bottom off and put that in there. But if you want to upgrade the memory or change out the NVMe drive, then you'll have to kind of take this apart a little bit more. Now, the outside of this case is plastic, so this blue whole outside piece is plastic, but the bottom is metal. So this is like a kind of a pretty thick aluminum. That might have to do with some heat dissipation for the internal hard drive. If you do mount an extra SSD in there, the bottom might be made out of aluminum to kind of dissipate some of that heat or get the heat away from the drive. But anyways, that's what this looks like kind of on the outside and inside. I do apologize, I got fingerprints all over it now. I have to get fingerprints all over it. But what I'm going to do on the second part of this video is I'm going to go ahead, plug this in, boot it up, and go ahead and run some tests and start to talk about this and share the results. So let's hop on over and check this out. So the first test I'm going to run here is a crystal disk mark test to test the read and write speeds of the SSD. I'll speed this up so that you can just see the results. And basically, for most part, this is performing pretty well for an internal SSD. And then here I did run the passmark performance test, and as you can see, the overall passmark rating is 3640, which includes the CPU mark of 18713, 2D graphics of 630, 3D graphics of 2438, memory mark of 2658, and a disk mark of 16489. So overall, I mean, I think that this seems to get a pretty decent score as it would be compared to other, other CPUs out there, other AMD chipsets. And And as you can see, though, the GPU graphics performance is not, super high. But again, this is integrated graphics as opposed to, a discrete graphics card. And, as it kind of relates to the CPU performance, you can really tell that these AMD Ryzen chips on the CPU side with 8 cores, 16 threads perform really well. And then, a little bit less so on the graphics performance. Now, the one thing I wanted to note here, it is picking up the memory as Micron memory, which is interesting because it's not branded when you look at it inside the case, but it does show up as Micron. So I thought that was interesting. And then also here, the hard drive is showing up as a Crucial P3 Plus 500 gig hard drive. Again, I can't tell because it didn't have any actual label on the hard drive when I was looking at the internal, but that's what it's being reported as. Now, from the Geekbench perspective, you can see the single core score of 1623, multi-core score of 6988, and just the standard output from the Geekbench browser, AMD Ryzen 7, base frequency 1.8 gigahertz, all the info there. You can see the single performance benchmarking at the bottom, as well as the multi-core. So pretty happy, I guess, actually on the Geekbench score. And then it scored a 16259 on the OpenCL score for the graphics. Also decent for these this type of mini PC. And then the last thing I did here was run the Cinebench benchmark, and you can see it had a CPU multi-score of 9336 and a CPU single score of 1262. So overall, again, did decently well here. And as you can see here, I had the settings on kind of like a mix of low and medium, and the actual gameplay is pretty smooth, as you can see. Not a lot of jerking or stuttering or anything like that. Generally seem to have gotten, close to 30 frames a second, maybe up to 50, 60 frames a second, depending on, what the settings were and all of that. But I'll just kind of let this play for a little bit so you can see generally some of the 3D gameplay using this machine. So overall, after playing with this thing, running the benchmark tests, and actually running Fortnite, I'm like super, happy with how this thing performs, right? Doing the benchmarks was one thing, but actually getting in, playing Fortnite, and just seeing how the PC reacted to that, how smooth the gameplay was. Obviously, you have to have some settings toned down a little bit. You can't run this all on ultra and high settings. It's obviously not going to work that well. But if you're just looking for some light gaming, you know, like I said before, work computing, all those sorts of things, this really is a compelling value, especially now. There's some coupons here on Amazon. You can get this kind of close to $300, and at that point, I think that this is a really, really good value. You know, just for price for performance and just the flexibility, the small footprint, and all of that. I think this, you know, certainly something you should take a look at if you're in the market for a mini PC. So I will link to this in the description below. I'll also link to Trigkey's website if you want to learn a little bit more about them. If you have any questions, definitely go ahead and post those. I'll be sure to answer. This is Andrew from T is for Tech. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Access granted.